to another edition of the Bald Watch Modder. We've got the Steeldive 1970 here and the Captain Willard Seiko. So you can see the original here. And this is the one that I created before, so this is more of an update video. And the dial I had was pretty close to the original dial, but not exactly right, so I decided to change it. I managed to source a new dial that was as close to the original dial as I could possibly find. The only main difference is that the Seiko words are actually done in a glossy sort of finish rather than a matte finish, but it's as close as it can get. So we're going to mod the watch again to put a more realistic dial in it as far as I'm concerned, because I like to get as close to as possible to the original, because I enjoy the original old school divers. So we just take off the case back once more, and then it's going to be a case of removing the water gasket ring or O-ring that keeps the watch waterproof, and then we're going to remove the crown and stem from the watch. So you push on that little lever, you just unwind it, don't pull it out, and then just push down on that little lever and then pull out the crown and stem. Once that's done, you just lever the mechanism out on the bridge. So you're just going to basically pull it out on something that's not going to break the mechanism. So lever it out till it comes out. Should come out reasonably easy. Turn the watch over so we can remove the movement. I'm going to pop back in the crown and stem now, because what we need to do is pop on the hands. So that's a case of just push the crown and stem in, give it a little twiddle. It doesn't need to be forced, just sort of rotate it backwards and forwards and it will just find its own way home. There's no need to force it or anything like that. It will just go back in. Once you get that back in, just test that it's working, which it is. That's working absolutely fine. And then it's a case of just, we're going to align the hands up so that we can remove them. Pop on the dial protector, just slide that underneath the hour hand. It sort of clicks into place slightly, and once that's in, we can then get our hand removal tools, whichever ones you prefer, and then we're going to be able to remove the hands. I prefer to use the manual type tools. It's just a personal preference. There are automatic hand removers, but I prefer these ones. It's just a little bit more controlled as far as I'm concerned. You get a bit more control on what you're doing. So pop off the hands, pick them up, use a bit of bird john to pick them up, and then put those to the side so you can keep those safe, because we're going to be reusing those. So you want to remove them. If you are reusing your hands, you know, be careful with them. You don't go bending them up, otherwise you're going to have to replace them. So here we have the dial. You can see it a little bit closer there. That's the one that we had on the original mod. I was going to pop that off, and it had dial feet, so it was easy to align it. With this new one, it is actually made to go with the original Willard, so we had to cut off the feet. So you can see the comparison here, and you can see the one on the right is the new one, which is far more faithful to the original watch, which is what I want. So we're going to pop on these dial dots. We're using double-sided tape to do this, so you just pop these on, snip it off, take off the protective covering so it's sticky both sides, and then just make sure it's in position. Make sure that it's not going to touch the date wheel. That's the most important thing. Use your tweezers to take off the backing paper here, and then you repeat this. At least I repeat this 4 times, and then we're going to align the dial. So just remember, because this is a 3.8 crown, you want to remember what date it is, which will help you. So we're going to align the dial to the correct date, pop that down. It's very simple. This is a very simple, aligned perfectly almost straight away, which is always great. Once that's aligned, what you want to do is just test the movement again to make sure that the calendar wheel is not binding up or fouling on the back of the new dial so that that's all perfect, because otherwise you don't want that happening, because it could maybe mess up the watch or slow the change down, so that's no good. Once that's done, we're going to remove the crown and stem once more. So once again, it's just pushing on that lever and pulling out the crown and stem. I'm going to pop it in the case just to sort of give it a test fit, really, so we can get an idea that everything's functioning okay. So pop it into the case, pop the crown and stem back in once again, and then we can test it. It's a little bit tedious, but it's better to get these things right the first time round, you know, rather than having to go backwards and forwards, redoing things. So it's best to test what you're doing as you go along. Everything seems to be working okay, so it's a case of removing the movement, crown and stem again, removing the movement back out again, and then we can move forward. So you need to turn the watch now so that it goes to 12 o'clock, so that we've got the hour hand. When we go to put the hands on, the hour hand is going to be in the right position. So it's just turned over at 12 o'clock so that we can pop that in. Once that's done, we can put the hour hand on. So I'm just using some Burgeon to basically hold the hand while I put that on. The main thing, as I've said before in the past, make sure you use the right tool for this job. If you use too large a hole or too small a hole, you might damage the movement, or you can bend the hand. So you want to make sure you use the right size tool for this job. The hour hand being the largest opening. Once that's on, we're just going to align it slightly, make sure it's spot on, and give it a final push to make sure it's nice and secure. You can feel when it goes on, it's got like a little click. You want to make sure that it's on there correctly. Once that's done, just rotate it round to make sure it's working, it's not fouling anything. It's on level. You don't want it tilting up either way. If it's tilting up a little way, you can either push on it just slightly to the left or slightly to the right, front or back, I mean, whichever way is best for you, to make sure that you get that hand on nice and straight. Rotate it round, or at least I rotate it round to 6 o'clock, and then we put on the minute hand. Once again, you put on the minute hand, similar way, make sure that you use the right tool, the hole opening is the correct size, push that on. Once that's snapped on, what you want to do is then just rotate it again to make sure that everything there is working correctly as well. Make sure that the hands, very important, not fouling each other, because of course that would stop the movement, possibly even damage it. So we got this done, and I'm just checking the alignment that it's okay. Seems to be pretty good. And then what I'm going to do is rotate it round so that I can make sure that the time is pretty much as accurate as possible. This one was a little bit off. I think you can see it's roughly what, 5 minutes off. So what I'm going to do is just push that back. There's normally a little bit of play. If there isn't, then what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to remove the hands and go again. Some people just leave it. Some people aren't bothered. It's not that accurate, but I like it to be as accurate, as close as possible as we can get it. So just push that back, and now it's a case of putting on the seconds hand. Seconds hand can be a little bit tricky. If you are having a problem, a good way to make sure you get it onto the pin is to sort of put your eye level down to table level, where you can see that pin, and then align it a bit easier. If you're looking from above, it can be a bit difficult. This one went on pretty easy. So once that's on, just give it a little firm press to make sure it's on, not too hard obviously. Check that it's working, and then just basically check that the hands aren't fouling each other. Most common I find that foul each other is the seconds and the minutes. So make sure that's not going to foul each other. It's good to let it run round and let the second hand go round and check it at different spots, because sometimes it does go, can go up and down a little bit. Just check the alignments okay, then we can pop out the movement and move on to the next stage. So it's a case of taking out the crown and stem again. Out comes the crown and stem, so that we can put the movement back into the case. So it's a case of what you want to do now is make sure everything's okay, give it a little blow with a puffer thing, give it a clean, make sure that it's not got any dust or bits, because you don't want to have to be going back in, you know, over and over again because of bits of dirt. So it's best to get it as clean as possible as you can the first time round, because I think spoils a build more than you get it out into a bit of sunlight and it's got dust and fluff all over it, which is just a waste of time. So get it as clean as you possibly can. Just using the Rodico here. I think I called it Burgeon a few times, but anyway, Rodico, clean it off as best you can. Pop the movement back into the dial, so we can sorry, back into the case. So now we can finally see the watch. What we're going to do is just push it in, and I push it in with the plastic on the plastic holder. I don't push it in on the mechanism. Just use the plastic holder to push it back in and align it. I like to make sure that the stem, I can visually see that the stem is going to go in as straight as possible before I put the stem in, because I don't really want to use the stem to move the movement inside the case. I think it's better to do it that way. Make sure it's as aligned as possible. Once it's in, if you need a slight adjustment, you can then adjust it. It's a case of then re-siliconing the case back gasket, so that the case back gasket is going to hold its waterproofness. Now, obviously this was done before, so you could possibly skip the step if you wanted, but you know, for the sake of it, there's no much point. You might as well do it. Just going to clean off a bit of dirt, because this watch has been worn. So I'm just going to clean the bits of dirt that have accumulated in the recess for where the gasket goes. Pop the gasket back in. Just get it put in properly. Make sure that it's not going to get caught by the case back, because obviously if it's compromised at all, then it's not going to be waterproof. This has been off a few times, so the gasket's got a little bit looser than it was before, so it's a case of just making sure that it's back in place correctly. Once it is, you can then put the case back on. I put the case back on by popping it on the back, making sure it's obviously not catching on anything, winding it backwards slightly, so anti-clockwise first, and then clockwise to tighten it down, just to make sure that it doesn't cross thread. I also just find it a lot easier way of doing it. So basically just wind that round, get it on hand tightness, and then of course you can use your case back tightener to torque it down. And when you torque it down, let the gasket do its job, don't go crazy and you know, completely crushing that gasket to pieces. So here we have the watch. Just going to make sure that the bezel insert lines up. It's slightly off. It might be a case of you've got to go back in and either move the movement if you wanted to, or it might be a case of realigning the bezel insert. But it's good enough at the moment, so I'm going to leave it as it is. And now it's a case of popping on the strap. So put it back on the waffle strap that was on it originally. Waffle strap came from Buckle and Stitch off of Amazon. They're pretty good straps for the price. It's about $14.95. It's a reasonably good strap for the price. You can get more expensive. There are cheaper ones, but I don't recommend them. They're very that sort of spongy, soft, off-coloured grey thing, grey black colour, which I don't personally like. I find it just spoils the watch. So here we have the updated Steeldive 1970 to look more like a Captain Willard, and I'm really pleased with it. It looks a lot more like the original, which is what I want. I want to get mod watches, especially the retro ones, because I like the old school retro ones. I like to mod those watches and get it as close to the original as possible, so that I can have those watches, or at least the look of those watches. Obviously, you know, to have an original, that would be amazing, but it's a minefield getting one, and they're very expensive. So this is a compromise. Being lucky enough to get this dial, which I find absolutely brilliant because it's as close to the original as possible. As I said, the only difference is the loom. The loom is too green. The loom would not have been this green on the original, and also the Seiko word is in a glossy finish, a shiny chromy finish. It would have been a matte. So it wouldn't have the reflections that you're getting, but this is as close as it gets, and I think it looks absolutely amazing. So we're going to have more retro diver builds in the future. We've got a turtle coming up pretty soon, and then a few more retro divers, because I'm really enjoying building the retro divers, as I said, because to get them or to own them would be difficult, and it's a minefield, and you have to have them serviced and things like that. This is a modern watch. Well, thanks again for watching. Tune in next time to the Bald Watch Modder, and we'll have more mods. Bye!